Thank you, Reverend John Samuel, for inviting me to present this session. We will have two lessons from Genesis narrative for this class. These are taken from Earth Bible Volume 2. The first one is a study of Genesis chapter 6, verses 11 to 13, on the basis of the question of eco-justice, written by Anne Gardner. Let me read that passage first. I hope all of you have received the text that we are supposed to study today. And Genesis 6, 11 to 13, let me read that passage. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw that the earth was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its ways upon the earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. Now I am going to destroy them along with the earth. That's the passage, first passage that we'll be studying. The word earth, Hebrew, it's eretz. You must be familiar with that word by now. And eretz appears 6 times in this small passage of 3 verses. The verb to destroy, nishkat, appears 4 times, and all flesh, called basar, and violence, kamas, 2 times each. Therefore, the spotlight is in this passage is on earth. But traditional interpretations of this passage did not take this earth factor seriously. Instead, they focused on the violence of all flesh. It is true that violence of all flesh created the havoc to destroy the earth. But the word earth, eretz, as it appears 6 times, the spotlight, according to Anne Gardner, now in this passage, is upon earth. And you may be familiar with different sources, especially for Genesis narratives. This passage is referred to as a P narrative. P narrative means it's a priestly narrative. There are other narratives also, JEDP. There are 4 different sources for many other Old Testament books, especially the Pentateuch. And definitely Genesis has the elements of these 4. J means Yahwist, and E means Elohist. D means Deuteronomist source, and P is priestly narrative. Simply, I would say that Yahwist source J uses Yahweh or Jehovah as a name for God, whereas E source uses Elohim to represent God. And Deuteronomist source, of course, is later narrative corpus altogether. And priestly narrative has some indications about the cultic life of Israel. It relates to the priestly understanding of a passage. Simply said, I would say in the first 2 chapters of Genesis, we have first chapter until the second chapter, 4th verse, it's a priestly source, P narrative. Whereas from chapter 2, verse 5 to the rest of the next chapter, 3, is Yahweh's source. We can see that the name Yahweh is used to represent God. And in the first chapter, we see God as the priestly source would refer to God. And now this passage that we just read, 6, 11 to 13, belongs to the P narrative. And therefore, we can see a connection, a link with the passage in the first chapter of Genesis. It's interesting that this author, Anne Gardner, has found some connections between these 2 passages. That is Genesis 1, verse 1 to chapter 2, verse 4a. It's interesting to note that the narrator, the P narrator, reverses the pattern from and God said, and God saw, to and God saw, and God said. You can refer to the 2 passages And we can say that God said, that we read from the passage. We can see the narration of different creation in the first chapter, beginning with then God said, and then again it would say that God saw that it was good. The creation was good. That's the whole idea. Therefore, God said that let there be light, let there be other creatures. With this word, God created everything. And at the end of each day, God saw that the creation so far is good. And it is after God creating human beings that we see God saw that creation as very good. Let me also say something here. We may always wonder why the good creation that God created became bad. Why God did not produce or create a perfect world so that evil would not have existed. And again, the question comes, why God put two trees in the middle of the garden in the next narrative, Yahweh's narrative, and allowed the human beings to eat from all the other trees, except for those two trees, the fruit of the tree, two trees kept in the center of the garden. We may say that it's by allowing this opportunity, window of opportunity to sin, that human beings sinned in the first place. So also I would say, I remember once my own professor, Dennis Olson at Princeton University, he referred to this passage like this: God saw everything good and very good, but God did not say that it's perfect. Therefore, according to Dennis Olson, the theologian, Old Testament theologian, God did not create a perfect world, allowing room for freedom of humanity. That's the same thing that we can see in the Garden of Eden, when the two trees were forbidden. But as we know, because human beings wanted to exercise their freedom apart from the will of God and purpose of God, they ate the fruit and they were expelled from the Garden of Eden. Having said so, let us see how here in this passage we see, especially when we see that God saw that earth was corrupt in God's sight, and God saw that the earth was corrupt. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. Now I am going to destroy them along with the earth. Therefore, it's interesting to note that the P narratives, both in Genesis 1 and 6, the passage that we read, reverses the pattern. And God said, let everything appear. And then God saw everything as good. But later, we see God saw that the earth was corrupt. All flesh had corrupted its ways upon the earth. And then God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh. I'm going to destroy. See, in the first place, it was creation of everything. But now God is thinking in terms of destroying the earth. We are going to decipher the meaning of this passage. Now, God tells Noah that the end is coming for all flesh, contrasting it with the beginning of Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth, that's how it begins. The beginning is now coming to an end. And the question is, what happened to the good earth to get destroyed? And Genesis 6 refers to the physical destruction of the earth rather than moral or metaphorical destruction. Therefore, we are concerned about the physical destruction of the earth with the flood. And the earth is ruined to the extent that it cannot fulfill its original purpose. Now we'll go to the original purpose of God in creating the cosmos and the life within it, and human life to be in particular. What is the original purpose of God? Everything should be a source of life, a habitat for all the creatures, and sustainer of the creatures, the land creatures in particular. Therefore, now the earth is ruined to the extent that it cannot fulfill its original purpose. We'll go to the next slide. We can see a similar destruction happening like the flood in chapter 6, in Exodus chapter 8, 20 and 24. There we read as a plague which happened among the 10 plagues. This is one. The earth was destroyed because of a swarm of flies. We don't know the real nature of the flies here. It's not described. But later we find that in another instance of plague, locusts are specifically called to come and destroy the vegetation on earth. Therefore, it's not locusts that we are talking about in Exodus 8, 20 and 24. The earth was destroyed because of a swarm of flies. Which could these creatures be? Definitely insects. There are many pests of fruit and vegetables now we are familiar with. There are termites, which create a lot of havoc. Moths are there. Butterflies are good looking, but the first phase of the butterflies is that of caterpillar, which actually destroys many leaves. Bees are there, and wasps are there. Locusts, as I mentioned earlier, appears in another plague in Egypt. Therefore, we can see a similar destruction again happening in Exodus event. Now we are concerned about the flood story. All flesh and the destruction of his or its way. All flesh refers to those creatures who have the breath of life. That is chapter 6, 17. All flesh makes a reference to all creatures who have the breath of life. It's not just human beings who have the breath of life. All the creatures have the breath of life. And Genesis 7, 21 also echoes chapter 1, 21, 27, which says, and all flesh died, which moved upon the earth, including birds, cattle, beasts, all creeping ones who creep upon the earth, and all humankind. This indicates that animals and birds, as well as humankind, had gone against the way of life prescribed for them by God. Therefore, this is the reason why floods occurred. Even though we know that in the narrative, it shows that now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and earth was filled with violence. But the real reason for the flood is mentioned here as all flesh had corrupted its ways upon the earth. Therefore, corrupting its own ways upon the earth as God prescribed them to be resulted in this flood. So the reason behind the flood is definitely the violation of the original way of life that God prescribed. Then the way of life we can see prescribed in Genesis 1, 28 to 30. I will read that now. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. God said, see, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And interestingly, in verse 30, we read, and to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. So we can see that it was so. That means every creature were given a food which is that of vegetation. And we may wonder why the carnivorous animals eat upon living beings, poor creatures. That is also not in the original intention. That's why we also read in the prophet Isaiah that a wolf will be together with a lamb. How can a wolf be together with a lamb? A wolf usually preys upon the lamb. But that's an eschatological hope that reflects the original intention of God. By the way, human beings are now non-vegetarian in their food habit. But when we think about that, human beings were given as food the fruits and the vegetables in the first place. It was not in the original intention of God to eat flesh or even spill blood. That may be the reason why the Jews found a way by which they will drain off the blood from the meat. Muslims call it as halal meat. They circumvent God's original intention. And we can see also that after the flood, God promises, I will never again cut off all flesh from the waters of the flood. We will discuss that in the second session. Now we move to how did non-humans transgress the way? That's a question that we are concerned about. Non-humans could have transgressed God's way by eating foodstuffs other than vegetation. That is very evident in chapter 130. Let me also say one more thing. We human beings do not have a canine teeth developed. Many of the carnivorous animals have the canine teeth developed because they want to tear off fresh meat from the prey. They have adapted in such a way. But human beings do not have a canine teeth grown as the carnivorous animals. That is surface an indication that we are herbivorous in nature. Therefore, non-humans also could have transgressed God's way by eating foodstuffs other than vegetation, because all the creatures were given the mandate to eat from the vegetation. And Yahweh's account, J account, refers to enmity between the serpent, the earth, and human beings in Genesis narrative. It shows as a that it happened. The judgment happened as a result of disobedience to God. We can also see, in contrast, the major player in this narrative, Noah, instead walked with God. Genesis 6:12. There is a contrast between Adam and Eve and Noah. We can see three precepts or commands made by God in the Genesis narrative. That is Genesis 1:28 to 30, we can see. First one is be fruitful and multiply. Human beings are given the mandate to be fruitful and multiply. And second one is to fill the earth and subdue it. This is problematic, actually. Subdue actually means subjugation of the earth. And this demand or precept or command made the Judeo-Christian tradition bearing a burden of guilt. According to nature historian Lynn White Jr., he challenged the Judeo-Christian tradition for this mandate, because he would say that all the pollution and other ecological problems that today we face is mainly due to this mandate given or assumed by God, by human beings, that we are supposed to fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the earth. These two are problematic. The third precept, having dominion over the earth. Instead, we would say that in the second narrative, Yahweh's narrative, human beings are called to till it and keep it. What is this it? The Garden of Eden. They are called to till the garden and keep the garden. That's a different understanding. Therefore, this problem lies here. Filling the earth and subduing it and having dominion over the earth actually can be a cause for degradation of the earth. And the fourth precept is God is giving to human beings the gift of fruits and herbs as food, which also human beings have violated, so to say. Therefore, this is there are actually it's not three precepts but four. Let me correct here. Four precepts or commands. And earth was destroyed according to Genesis 6, or ruined prior to the flood. Therefore, it is not flood that destroyed the earth, but human and non-human activity not pertaining to the original purpose of God has actually destroyed the earth, even prior to the flood. Humankind did not fill the earth in a way which promoted the welfare of the earth. Therefore, all of these precepts were sometimes overlooked or breached, I would say. Now, coming to the text that we are studying, we see that violence filled the earth. There are blood taboos, especially in Judaic tradition, contributed to the notion of violence with which all flesh fill the earth. That violence that we can see in human beings as well when the first murder was done. Abel was killed by his brother Cain. Such violations happened throughout history. And also in Genesis, later in Genesis chapter 11, also we see human beings making rebellion with God. And they were again scattered over all the earth. And all flesh is destroyed with the earth, with the floods happening. Therefore, violence filled the earth, and all flesh destroyed the earth, and they are in turn destroyed by the flood. Later, we see that the principle of subduing is withdrawn by God. You can read that in the text that we have shared. Therefore, this question of subduing is withdrawn so that the earth should be protected. We can see in the ark, Noah's ark, this protection is underway. 2 by 2, every organism are being drawn into the ark. And that's how subduing that act is withdrawn after the flood. And what are the implications for the present time? Let me show you a few pictures of the recent floods, that is 2018, which made a havoc in Kerala. We are all familiar with that. And there is a recent movie, 2018, which reflects the whole issue. We can see people rescuing children and other helpless people from the flood-hit areas. On the right, you have a whole area inundated with water, flood, and the last picture down there is near the dam, Idukki Dam. The people are running for life and also taking care of others, helping people stranded to get across to the other side for safety. And even this bridge was collapsed later, like that. And in 2013, we saw Uttarakhand state being flooded with water and silt. The river Ganges and other rivers which circumambulate the holy shrines of Hinduism, like Badrinath and other holy shrines, they were all inundated with water and silt. All of these point to how human beings, in the name of development, have neglected nature and earth, and that's how we have this global warming also coming up as a warning upon humanity. We are all concerned about the global warming and its effects. Therefore, these are some issues related to how these concerns have implications for our present time. Let me figure out the last part of this text. If you have that, you can refer to. The failure prior to the flood to respect the principles of intrinsic worth. This is an eco-justice principle. And another eco-justice principle is interconnectedness. Because all of these created beings are interconnected and they have an intrinsic worth. Therefore, the failure upon a human beings, their part is they could not respect the principles of intrinsic worth and interconnectedness. And we have injudiciously removed the trees. That's one reason why Uttarakhand incident happened. Because for many reasons, the forest cover was removed to create roads for the army personnel and for development purposes. And Tehri Dam and other dams are constructed in the Himalayan region, which is a very brittle area, sensitive region. All of these have contributed to the Uttarakhand floods, which was repeated also to a lesser extent in subsequent years as well. And Kerala also witnessed in 2019, following 2018, a similar flood, but that is managed successfully. And the removal of trees without replacing them is showing dishonor to the earth. And changes in rainfall patterns contributes to many of these floods. Let me also say that floods are not the only problem. Floods usually will be followed by a period of drought as well. Therefore, floods and droughts alternate patterns in the Indian Peninsula. Therefore, the changes in rainfall patterns, global warming is a serious threat to many Pacific Island people, because when the global warming happens, the sea level increases, and the first affected will be people living in remote islands. Another place which is very close to India are Andaman Nicobar Islands and Lakshadweep, like that. And the flora and fauna are lost due to human intervention. And we have extinction of species as a result. And the contamination and pollutants as a result of rapid industrialization is still a problem in India. And we also have environmental refugees, especially the Narmada Bachao Andolan is a movement which is against the building of huge dams across the river Narmada. We are contaminating or polluting the earth and its rivers, and therefore survival of all life is dependent upon a healthy earth and a healthy water. Therefore, the implications of this story about the flood is large and very valid when we have to take care of the earth. And the important thing is we should not abandon the original purpose of God in creation, whether it is for humankind or for other creatures. Therefore, let me get back to the main point here. All flesh have caused this destruction of his or her or its way. That means human beings and other creatures have digressed from the original purpose of God in creation. God saw everything, every created order as good, but God again saw, as we read in this narrative, the earth was corrupt in God's sight and the earth was filled with violence, and God saw that the earth was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its ways upon the earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. Now I am going to destroy them along with the earth. Therefore, this is a very good illustration of how eco-justice must be a primary concern for human beings, and how the whole earth and its created order must be taken care of as stewards of God is the main issue here. Now we'll move to the next lesson. This is taken from Genesis chapter 9. This is the after effect of the flood story and how God makes a covenant with human beings. Valley Fejo is an indigenous writer stationed in Australia. Therefore, we will see how he relates his own context as an Aboriginal of Australian subcontinent to illustrate a reading of Genesis chapter 9. Voice of the Earth. Voice of the Earth is one of the eco-justice principles that Norman C. Habel and his team has produced. And we'll be listening to the voice of the earth in this narrative. Let me read from Genesis 6:19 and Genesis 9:8 as well. In the days of Noah, the Hebrew covenant is renewed after a flood with the divine provision for the wild creatures. I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the domestic animals, and every animal of the earth with you. And God instructs Noah to keep them alive with you. Because in the ark that he made, constructed, God instructed Noah to keep them alive with him. And the Hebrew word geset has a double duty. It refers to both war bow and rainbow. We can see that usually the covenant that God made with Noah is called either Noahide covenant or rainbow covenant, like that, because it involves a rainbow as a mark for that covenant, which God makes with the earth and its creatures. The Hebrew word keset can either mean war bow or rainbow. For example, we are familiar with war bow because in the olden days, there was a good artillery for the army. A bow and arrow would be used. That is called war bow and rainbow. The majority of exegetes of this passage in Genesis chapter 9 understand the bow, keset, in the clouds to maintain its military connotations representing God's war bow. As such, rainbow functions as a symbol of peace. Let me also reiterate, as the author refers to in the text, Enuma Elish is a Babylonian mythical story in which Marduk's bow is hung among the stars after his defeat of Tiamat and her allies. Thus, most exegetes see the significance of the rainbow as representing God's undrawn war bow set to one side after the defeat of his enemies as a token of victory or peace and reconciliation. We can also say that rainbow appears like a withdrawn bow, war bow. If war bow is like this, you have to, put the arrow on the string and the bow, and it will function as a weapon. But here, the whole rainbow is like an inverted bow. War. Therefore, many interpreters will say that this rainbow is God's bow withdrawn, that never again God will destroy the earth. And here, Vani Fejo, and this indigenous Australian, he says, I belong to this land. The land is my mother, my provider, my keeper. See, indigenous traditions, religious traditions always venerate earth, similar to the concept. Therefore, most of the indigenous religions have land as their God. They consider land as God. I belong to this land. The land is my mother, my provider, my keeper. We are heirs of the land. We are familiar with the term sons of the soil, which actually we heard from Mumbai earlier with Shiva Sena chief Bal Thackeray. He introduced the term to refer to people coming from other parts of the world or other states as not sons of the soil, sons and daughters of the soil. Here, Valley Fejo would say, I am the son of the soil, son of the land. I belong to this land. The land is my mother, my provider, my keeper. My personal dreaming, totem, it's an Australian term, original term, is connected with Old Man Rock. Old Man Rock is representing the God concept, the spirit of our common ancestor, sharing the same spirit. The rock is linked physically and spiritually with Uluru, the great red rock at the center of Australia. They consider that as the center of the earth. You can see in the bottom picture, Uluru, this rock is seen in the center of Australian peninsula. They think that this place is the center of the earth, as it is the center of Australia. And this is a picture of this Uluru rock from a distant view. This is a closer look at the Uluru rock. He would say that Australian Aboriginals will think about this rock, Uluru rock, the great red rock at the center of Australia, as the center of the earth. And every other rock is an extension of this rock called Uluru. And he also says that they think that the earth is a means of communicating with my ancestors, my people, my God. God the Creator is present in the land. When I die, I return to my land, my God. See, we can see a parallel in Jewish scriptures, Old Testament. From earth we came, and to earth we will return. That passage we are familiar with. For when I die, I return to my land, my God. The Europeans, they have a critique about the Europeans. They came and messed up our land, desecrated it, polluted it, caused it great suffering. The land cries out. The ancestors cry out from the land like the blood of Abel. See, the voice of the earth is heard. And we see that when Cain is frightened after the killing of his brother Abel, he wanted to flee from this place. And God tells him that the land which has taken up the blood of Abel is furious at you. Therefore, the ancestors cry out from the land like the blood of Abel. For us, the rainbow was always an assurance of food, plentiful food. It was a sign of the Creator Spirit speaking with us, promising us food. And the Creator spoke through the rainbow, according to this author. And the earth is revealed. See, when the whole earth was covered with flood of waters. It was a reversal of what happened in the time of creation in Genesis 1. The whole earth was filled with water, and the first thing that got created was to separate the land from water. Now, the reverse thing happened. Again, the whole earth is filled with water, covered with water. And after the flood, we see the earth again revealed. In the beginning, the land was covered with waters until the Creator spoke. When the Creator spoke, the earth was revealed, emerging from beneath the waters. That is Genesis 1. When the Creator spoke, the dreaming totem happened. All kinds of life emerged from the land and covered the earth, forms of life with which human beings have kinship, both physical and spiritual, emerged. And we can see that the land is alive with people, with ancestors, with life, with God. God was and still is in the land, according to the indigenous tradition. So when God said, let the land be seen, God was also saying, let me be seen so that you can see. Therefore, when the land became visible again, after the floods receded, waters receded, then, according to the author, the new beginning is happening. The earth is the first and primary medium of God's self-revelation, according to many traditions. Earth is violated. The violation of the earth by human beings is the reason for the flood. As we discussed in the previous text, when the humans fill the earth with violence, they violate the earth, and the earth becomes corrupt. And why does God suffer and grieve in Genesis chapter 6? First, because the human beings God has created from the earth have become evil and have filled the earth community with evil. And the earth is concealed again. Why then does God choose to send a flood and destroy the life on earth? If the earth is where God is and the home of all God has created, why does God destroy this precious place? Because it is sick, corrupted by human evils, and therefore it needs healing. When the earth was concealed by water, the situation returns to the way it was in the beginning. The earth is beneath the waters again. God is beneath the waters again. And Noah finds favor in the eyes of the Lord. Noah is all our ancestors, including our indigenous ancestors. The ark is a symbol of our hope amid this ecological crisis, this flood of pollutants. And he says, earth is revealed again. The ark lands on a rock called Mount Ararat. Many archaeologists have found some place called Ararat, Mount Ararat, where they landed on a rock, they assume. But there is a mountain called Mount Ararat. As the water recedes, the rock appears. The rock is filled. It is like Old Man Rock. Remember the Australian Bengaluru rock, the rock of my dreaming. God is there in the rock too. When the ark made the contact with, otherwise it was flooding, drifting along the waters. Then when the ark made the contact with the land, solid land, the interconnection between all creatures, God and the earth, was re-established. Therefore, this is a Bible eco-justice principle too. Now we see another eco-justice principle in operation, voice from the earth. The covenant with all living creatures in Genesis 9 is the voice of God speaking from within the earth to earth's creatures. The covenant reflects God's concern for the earth. But usually traditional interpretations of this chapter in Genesis have tended to focus on the content of God's promise never to destroy the earth with a flood again. Just as significant is the fact that God is making a covenant with creatures other than humans. God's covenant with all living things means that God relates to the animals, birds, and other creatures on earth as living subjects, not simply as mindless objects. Therefore, intrinsic worth is the principle 3 that is upheld here. God's covenant is to preserve all species. God's voice from the earth is spoken to all life, a bond that lasts forever. Now we have the voice of the earth again. The content of God's promise for the future of the earth, that is principle 4. God will never again destroy the earth by covering it with water. The earth will always be seen, and that means God will always be seen. But the problem is, if we are not taking care of the earth and the global warming issues, if we don't attend to them, human beings are actually creating another all-encompassing flood. The whole earth will be filled with water again. With the glaciers melting in the northern and southern poles of the earth, we are really in danger. And the rainbow of earth is a sign. It's a communication, clear communication from God about God's relationship with earth. Another expression of voice of God rising from the earth. See, the rainbow arises from the earth like a bow, inverted. Just as the land emerged from the waters, here also this covenant sign of rainbow also appears from the earth below, covering the whole atmosphere or horizon. And God sees this rainbow and remembers the promise made with earth. I will remember my covenant. God sends the rainbow from the earth to the sky for all to see. Even God is reminded when God sees the rainbow, that never to destroy the earth again. That's the covenant God made with earth and human beings. God has welcomed us to this place, this earth. The rainbow is a sign of that welcome. It's like an arch welcoming all of us into this world, which is God's creation. In response, we have to show respect. And there is one more aspect he discusses. Indigenous people of Australia have thought about God as a rainbow spirit. And a rainbow is a revelation of the rainbow spirit or rainbow snake emerging from within the earth. This is a picture. I think that picture is here. This is like a snake. All other creatures are shown here, birds, sheep, and kangaroo. We can see the creator spirit is represented by the circle, which surrounds the other symbols. At the center is the rainbow spirit symbol, which is connected, interconnected. This is taken from the title page of a book, Rainbow Spirit in Creation, a reading of Genesis 1. Here we have the 6 eco-justice principles, principle of intrinsic worth, interconnectedness, voice, purpose, mutual custodianship, and resistance. To conclude, I would say the earth connection. The covenant promise in Genesis 9 highlights the close interconnection between all of us, God, the earth, and all life. As interconnected members of the earth community, we have a responsibility to listen to the voices of others in the community. That voices include listening to the land, to the earth, to our own dreaming species, and all creatures. The rainbow is the promise of healing, of God's remembering. See, the violent, corrupt earth was healed with the covering of the waters and withdrawal of waters, again revealing a scope for a new life emerging, and God's remembering through the ark, the rainbow ark. The rainbow is also a sign of the covenant responsibility. We need to heed this sign like all signs from the earth.